Hello, everybody. Welcome into NBA Front Office Show. I'm your host, Keith Smith, flying solo today. I am the captain now. Trevor is not with us. I don't know if you've seen on social media, but he had a tree come down in his area and knock out power. So he is without power throughout the day today. So thankfully, everybody's safe. Everybody's okay. But he doesn't have power. So he's hoping to be back up and running tomorrow. So you got me today. We didn't want to let a day go by without a show, and figured it was just going to be easier to jump into topics live with folks. It's just a lot less work to get it posted on the back end and all those sorts of things that we do here on NBA Front Office Show. So we are super excited to have you guys here. So get your questions flowing in the chat and the like. I'm going to start this by saying there may be a heavier Celtics focus on this episode, but these are going to be lessons that are also going to be very pertinent for any team that is dealing with apron issues and the like. So we're going to get into that. I was getting kind of buried in questions about the Celtics and the second apron and trading guys and what are the rules. And unfortunately, there's some prominent podcasts out there throwing out ideas that are pretty crazy and pretty wild that don't work and would be highly illegal. And then you add that to the number of folks who are all over social media very confidently wrong in things that they're saying that teams can and can't do. We're going to get into all this stuff. So we are very excited to have you guys with me. So please drop in any of your thoughts, questions that you want to get out there, anything with that stuff related to the cap and the CBA and all that stuff. And we'll get into all that. We'll probably save more of the conference finals talk for Trevor and I when we record tomorrow, because that will be something that he and I can dive into together with that. So, certainly neither one of us had the Eastern Conference Finals correct. Neither one of us get that one right, and neither one of us had the Wolves in the West. Trevor did, and I both had the Thunder, so we're in a decent place with them, I guess, from a pre-predictions with all that, but we'll get into it. So I'm gonna start flagging questions. You guys know how this goes when I'm by myself. It's always a little bit slower because I got to do kind of all of it here. So I'm just gonna tag a bunch of questions and then we'll get into all this stuff here with all that. So keep those questions coming in, and if I don't see them right away, I will do my best to get to them as I can. So. All right, so let's start off with YouTube user, very nice username there. Is there a good chance for sign and trades this offseason? Are both teams hard capped? What restricted free agent is most likely to evolve? What assets are generally required in a sign and trade? So that's a 4 or 5 for 1 there with questions. So that's great. But yeah, sign and trades are likely to come back anytime sign and trades come back around. In they're more in vogue is when teams are mostly capped out around the league, because that means any free agents it's tough for them to move. If you follow me, my projection for this offseason is the only team with cap space is the Brooklyn Nets. Detroit could get to some cap space, but that would be very likely done in a way to allow them to re-sign Malik Beasley. And then the other teams that could have cap space, it's not going to be enough for them to be major players, especially not in restricted free agency. In restricted free agency, what ends up happening there is the player has to get a big enough offer sheet. The incumbent team is like, we're good. We're going to move. Like, we're going to let you go to the team that signed you to the offer sheet, because they don't want to be in a position where, we're just matching the match, because that gets really tough. That can make a mess of things down the line. If it's any kind of reasonable offer, let's say it was Jonathan Kuminga and it was like $12 million a year, the Warriors are just going to match that, keep Kuminga and figure it out. You start talking 25, 30 or more, that's where it gets really tough. With the Warriors. Now, the other option would be, let's say Kuminga doesn't want to go to the Nets, or let's say the Nets don't really want to mess around with an offer sheet. This happened back in the day with Malcolm Brogdon in the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers really wanted Brogdon, and the Milwaukee Bucks were like, you know what? Why are we going to play games? We're not going to match reasonable offer sheet that you give him. let's just work out a sign and trade. So that's where those kind of things can happen. So we'll see, where that goes with this stuff. So I think there is a chance Kuminga could be involved in a sign and trade. That's a way for the Warriors to get him somewhere else where he can play more, maybe become a bigger part of a team than being kind of a semi-starter, rotation guy, even sometimes out of the rotation. So what happens there is, and that's a way for the Warriors to return value. So they'll work out maybe a sign and trade. The acquiring team gets hard capped. The other team can get hard capped. It depends on what else they do in the trade. What assets are generally required. Sometimes it will be, we're going to sign and trade you a guy and you're going to send us draft picks, or we're going to sign and trade and we're going to do something different. So I think what ultimately happens, if let's use Kuminga because we're already on that one. If you send Kuminga out in a trade like that, if you're the Warriors, you're probably looking for players who can help you win right now. You've got Steph, you've got Butler, you've got Draymond. You're not looking for draft assets and young players to develop down the line. You're looking for win now players. So that could be one where it is, all right, he's going to a younger team that can afford to give him more minutes, really let him step in to a bigger role. And then the Warriors take back, players from that team that can maybe help them win, going forward. So that's, that's where that kind of goes with that one. So we'll see, where all that kind of goes going forward with sign and trades. But sign and trades will very likely be back here in vogue again by this offseason. RJ Johnson says, and thanks for the super chat. We hear teams need to get under the cap in quotations, but how do deadlines vary based on the action the team wants to take or penalty to avoid? Yeah, I always get under the cap becomes a thing that gets said, but sometimes it's get under the tax. Now in the new world, it's get under the apron and avoid the restrictions that come from being an apron team and those things. There's no real, for get under the cap, you got to do that right at the start of the offseason, because otherwise free agency is going to move and you're going to miss out on guys. And then you end up in a spot where it's like, well, we have all this cap space and we don't really have anybody to use it on. It ends up used in trades, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But that's more of an offseason type thing. If it is the tax, your last real opportunity to do that is at the trade deadline. Because what happens is trade deadline's last chance to make major moves within the current league year. And at the end of the regular season, the NBA takes what they call a snapshot, which is where every team is at the end of the regular season in relation to the luxury tax. And that's what determines if you're a tax team or not. So that's, where that one goes. And then the aprons that's really kind of whenever you need to be under the apron, if you're trying to avoid the penalties that come with it, or you're trying to free yourself up some flexibility to do different things, that's where you kind of need to be in that position. So that's where the different kind of deadlines, if you will, come into play with those. But that's a great question, because that kind of stuff comes up here quite often with this. All right, let's go back into the questions I flagged. Mike asks, where do you land on Drew's trade value as a positive versus negative asset? I view it as pretty neutral, overpaid, but I think he could still return something of value. PJ Washington and Gafford. So, Mike, you didn't ask it this way, but I really appreciate you leading me kind of into this type of question, because this really is going to be, I think, very helpful for us kind of going forward. So I think the big thing here with the Celtics is Drew Holiday, if he's traded, so $32 million next season. The Celtics can take back multiple players. They just can't trade Drew Holiday plus Peyton Pritchard's $8 million and go get a $40 million player. They can't aggregate players on the outgoing side, but they can bring players back, multiple players for one. So in the case of Holiday, $30 million, Washington and Gafford, that's combined. I'm just going to call it $30 million. Doesn't really save the Celtics a ton of money, would save them a little bit, would obviously flush out the depth and, maybe allow them to trade some other guys and the like, but that's kind of a position where they could go with this. As far as Holiday himself, it's important to note, teams love Drew Holiday. The last two teams he joined, he helped lift to the championship. The Bucks a few years ago, the Celtics last season. So he is not considered to be a super positive asset as far as the contract goes, but it's also not a negative one either. He's in a position where For him, he's probably going to return pretty neutral value, probably better in the next year, maybe 2 years. And then that last year's where it gets potentially a little bit wonky. But what you're hoping for is if you're a team that needs him, you're going to go. When Trevor and I talked about Drew Holiday probably last week, the conversation we had was he probably doesn't have a super wide range of teams. There's probably not 20, 25 teams that are interested, but the 10 teams that are interested in Drew Holiday are probably really interested in him because they feel like he's the guy who can lift them to that next level, and that's where it goes to. So that's kind of where I think you're getting. Celtics are not going to get any kind of incredible return for Drew Holiday, certainly not like what they gave up to get him, nor what the Bucks gave up to get him from the Pelicans. He's just not at that level of his career, but the Celtics can get something positive that can help them, while very likely the goal would be reduce their tax bill. If let's just say it was Dallas, since you asked, Mike, I think they'd probably take back one of Washington or Gafford and look to send the other to a third team, and that's how they can further reduce their tax bill and kind of go from there with that. So great question. Really, glad you asked it because it was able to let me get to a couple other points that I want to hit on as well. Let's go. Jason M., please explain the Celtics cannot trade for a player, then decline their team option or waive their non-guaranteed money. Correct, Jason. This was put out there by Bill Simmons that maybe they could trade for Fred VanVleet and then decline his option and basically bank a crap ton of savings towards the apron in one big trade. That's not allowed. A player who's a pending free agent, either straight free agent or they have a player or team option, cannot be traded. So pending free agents can't be traded. Players with options can't be traded. If they do have an option, the Rockets could pick up that $44 million team option for Fred VanVleet and then trade him. That could happen. But at that point, his contract is fully guaranteed. So at that point, you're not banking any savings from acquiring him because you can't decline that option and get rid of him. A non-guaranteed contract works slightly different, or better phrased, a partially guaranteed contract. Zion Williamson, for example, $30 million, but only about $8 million of it looks like it'll be guaranteed. If they were to trade him, the Pelicans, the acquiring team is going to acquire the $30+ million on their side, but on the Pelican side, it's only $8 million that he accounts for because he only counts for the amount that he is guaranteed. They closed that loophole a couple of CBAs ago because teams were signing these guys to these kind of outrageous, big non-guaranteed amounts just to turn them into essentially trade exceptions. And that's really not what the league wants to do. So that's kind of where we're in a spot with that one. So I don't think that's going to be any way that we see anything play out like that where there's any major savings. If you want major savings for the side of the Celtics, you are either going to work with the Nets to get them to take on a player directly, or as a third team in a trade, take on some salary because they're the team with the big salary, or a team with a large trade exception that is well under the luxury tax and the aprons, and it's not going to cause issues for them. There are a couple big trade exceptions out there this summer. We'll see if that's the way that goes, but that's kind of where we're at with Boston. Otherwise, what I've been saying with the Celtics to get off of this money and get out of the apron concerns and the like, they are going to need to do this likely through a couple of transaction cycles. Probably do one move this summer, maybe two, then another one around the trade deadline, possibly, then another one next summer. Now you're out from underneath the aprons and you're starting to rebuild the team around Jason Tatum coming back. That's where we're at. There's some stuff out there of maybe Tatum, returns earlier than's been expected, but we'll see, kind of where that goes. All right, we're moving through these questions. Christian Paul, Keith, thoughts on Trey Johnson? I'm crazy high on this kid, excited for the draft. By the way, let's go Pacers. Yes, sirs, right? I kind of hate that. I don't really like the yes, sirs. Do people really call them the sirs in Indiana and Indianapolis? Let me know. Somebody drop that in the chat because I don't think that's a thing there. So Trey Johnson, I'm pretty high on Trey Johnson. He's a lot of fun. I think the thing with him is he reminds me a lot of like a Jordan Clarkson, Cam Thomas type player, probably more skilled as a scorer, little less skilled as a playmaker. Those guys, Cam Thomas especially, is becoming a better playmaker. Jordan Clarkson got to the point where he was actually a pretty good playmaker for a while. So I really am excited for Trey Johnson in the NBA. I think he'll step right in and be a scorer right away. He is, I like to use the term, he's extremely audacious as a scorer, where he is somebody who just, he comes into the gym and I'm going to get my shots up. I'm going to score. It doesn't necessarily look to take bad shots, but he'll take some every once in a while. But I'm really excited for him. I think he's going to be a really solid NBA player as a scorer, and let's see what he develops into as a playmaker, as a defender, and that'll really kind of tell us more where that comes with him. So, but yeah, great question. Love getting into the draft stuff. In defense, asked us, Pritchard get moved? I don't think so. He only makes under $8 million. It's not worth it to move him. You're not getting anything of value enough back for the role he plays. What you're looking to do as the Celtics, you want guys like that are outplaying their contracts for the next couple of years, because that's what you need to be in that position moving forward. So I'd be very surprised if Peyton Pritchard gets moved. Do the Bulls re-sign Giddy with their salary cap issues? The Bulls don't really have salary cap issues. They're over the cap, but so are 29 other teams, and very likely to be 30 by the time we get to the start of the season. But I think for the Bulls, their thing is, do they want to press in on the luxury tax? I think they can get Giddy re-signed without getting there. I think there's other moves that are coming for the Bulls. I think a move in the backcourt is very likely. I don't know that I think Javon Carter, their offseason preview posted on Spot Track yesterday or the day before. But it's up there. You can find it on my timeline. I think Carter picks up his player option. Then that gives them a lot of guys in the backcourt with him and Dosunmu and Kobe White. Giddy's really an on-ball guy. So these guys are all guys that starts to become, all right, that's a bit too much to have in the backcourt. So I think you might see a move on Dosunmu. If they feel like we might lose Kobe White next summer when he's an unrestricted free agent, because extending him is extremely unlikely, we could see Kobe White get moved. That could be a thing. And then I think the other thing we could see with the Bulls is a Nick Vucevic trade. Of course, they reportedly got really close with a couple different teams at the trade deadline, just a little harder to pull off. I think you'll see that kind of pick back up again this summer, and he may get moved, and that's how they'll create the flexibility. I think this team, for lack of a better term, is really building around Matas Buzelis and Josh Giddy going forward. Not that those guys are like locked in franchise players by any means. Maybe one of the two of them develops into that. I'd bet more on Buzelis than Giddy. But I do think they're going to re-sign Giddy, and they can play a little hardball with him too, because he's a restricted free agent. As we covered earlier in the show, the Nets are the only team with cap space that can really make them sweat an offer sheet. And I just don't think that's where the Nets really want to go with this. David D, when do draft picks convert to a dollar value when the draft pick has been used or when the player selected has been signed? So it's when they sign. When they sign, then they become whatever value. Otherwise, picks have a trade salary matching value of $0 in a trade. But when they sign, so this was, let's go back. We're going back a ways now, a decade almost. Kevin Love gets traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Part of what had happened was the Cavs had signed Andrew Wiggins that offseason after drafting him number 1 overall. And then they were able to use Wiggins as part of the salary matching with that. The one thing with first rounders, it triggers a 30-day hold. So there's a 30-day waiting period after they sign. So often you'll see guys either get traded before they sign, or they generally don't get traded at all, but after they sign, unless it's years down the line, maybe sometimes months if a team decides to move on very quickly with this. So let's see. I'm gonna grab a couple more questions out of the chat here with this. Okay, let's go here. Okay, Mr. Pulp Gaming. I don't know how you keep all this stuff in your head. The cap is confusing. Well, if you'd spent your 20s studying a CBA book as a non-lawyer, you instead of going out and having fun and doing all the things that 20-year-olds generally do, you could be here too, my friend. But yeah, I love this stuff. It's what I do. I'm very fortunate that I get to talk about this stuff. For my job. as a day-to-day basis. So I appreciate that. In defense, this is a crazy scenario where Boston goes after Giannis and trades Tatum in order to win ASAP. I highly doubt it. I don't know why the Bucks would want to be involved in that unless it's some kind of crazy 3-team trade where Tatum's going to another team and the other team gets him and they're like, hey, we have nothing going for us. We can wait and hope Jason Tatum gets back to being Jason Tatum. But I think that's highly unlikely. I think he just sticks in Boston. Let's see here. Sorry, just grabbing some more questions here. YouTube user asked, since we were on the subject of cap holds, first round picks don't they have a cap hold? They do have a cap hold. They just don't they don't have a salary matching number. So they do have a cap hold. So if you're sitting there with teams that it's one of the most common things people say to me, hey, I took all the free agents off a team's books. They're shedding. The number one most common thing is my team's getting rid of $50 million. Don't we have $50 million to spend? No, because most teams operate over the cap. So that's number one. The second most common thing that we get asked is, hey, I took all these guys off the books. Don't we now have, aren't we under the cap? Well, there's cap holds for free agents. There's cap holds for draft picks. Exceptions have it's like an exception hold that go on the books that count. And then you also have minimum roster holds that also trigger for the league minimum amount anytime you're under 12 somethings on your books. So whether that is 12 players under contract, you have 10 players under contract and 2 free agent holds, or 10 players under contract, a free agent hold, and a draft pick hold. Those don't really, kind of go that way. So that's kind of where it goes, with that. But yeah, they first round picks do have a cap hold. They just don't have a trade value assigned to them until the player signs. That's how those work. Westwood, do you foresee the Grizzlies blowing it up? Jackson potentially eligible for the Supermax, and Ja trade rumors are heating up. I don't know if Jackson's going to end up eligible for the Supermax or not. He didn't win Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not completely sold he's going to make an All-NBA team. Not after the way things kind of went for him and the Grizzlies in the last, let's call it, quarter of the season or so, where they kind of really slipped. I'm not fully sure. I'm very curious to see. That should be out this week. I hope all rookie teams are coming out tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get MVP. Look for MVP on, coming up soon when it'll be on a night with the Eastern Conference Finals because it gets announced on TNT. So look for that, and they're covering the Eastern Conference Finals this year. So keep an eye out for that. And then and then All NBA will generally follow behind that. Ja trade rumors, they're out there a little bit. I don't know how serious they are beyond, with the folks in the league. I talked to a lot of people this past week, and a lot of people were like, yeah, it's out there, but nobody seems to think too much of potentially Ja getting traded. JJ asked, which team who have been eliminated from the playoffs have the most questions this offseason? Boston, certainly now. What direction are they even going to go in? Are they going to do something different in the wake of the Jason Tatum injury? Are they going to try to add to the team right away and go forward? That could be the way that goes with that. Or do they, go? I think a couple other teams, I think Cleveland, they're extremely expensive for a team that's now fallen in the second round over the last couple of years. That's, a team we have to look at. The Lakers, it feels like a very incomplete roster around Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves. There's some good role players in there, but they don't have a lot of size. They've got a lot of stuff to work out from that. Not a playoff team, but they were a postseason team. Dallas, now with the number 1 pick, what are they going to do? They're going to take Cooper Flagg number 1. They've been pretty adamant that they're going to do that. But what do they do at the guard position? They don't really have a lot of guards on that roster right now, especially not point guards and primary creators. With Kyrie Irving hurt, so they're going to have to do something there. They've got a lot of front court guys now, so that's probably going to be a balancing move coming. So those are the teams, and that's just off the top of my head. Denver, how do they add depth too? I would add the Nuggets to that. They've got to get deeper. They cannot run back another year where it's by the time we get to just after the All-Star break, they've got 7 guys that they're playing. They've got to add depth some way in there. Let's see. Let's see. Just trying to make sure I'm not missing anything here that people are asking. Sorry, guys, I'm flying solo today. If you joined us late, Trevor had a tree fall in his neighborhood and knocked out his power. So that is he's okay, his family's okay, his home's okay, he just doesn't have power. So that's why you haven't seen much of Trevor today. So most important thing though, him and his family are all safe and okay. Let's see. Tony asked, sorry, Tatum got injured. Or he didn't ask. He said that part. Then he asked, are the Celtics able to get medical exemption for his salary? So this is a little confusing, but this is a good question because chance to get into the disabled player exception a little bit. They cannot get any kind of exception for his salary. His salary's on the books, it counts. Everything that's on the books counts. That's the easy way to remember this. If it's on the books, it counts. So what they can do is they can what's called a disabled player exception. And how that works is anytime there is a player who is found more likely than not to miss the entirety of the season, or the remainder of the season if they're hurt early in the season, they can get a disabled player exception. Disabled player exception is worth half the player's salary with a maximum value of the non-taxpayer mid-level amount. For next season, that's expected to be $14.1 million. So that's where that will go with the Celtics. I fully expect the Celtics to apply for the disabled player exception. I expect it to be granted to them. And then I expect from there, what happens with the Celtics is they will then kind of keep it. It's like my dad fixed printing presses for a lot of my life. And he always carried this giant toolbox around. One time I asked him, like, why do you carry so many tools around? And he said, you always want to have the tool in your toolbox in case you need it. You don't want to be knee deep into a job and then you can't use it. You don't have you then don't have have the tool you need. So you want to be able to put the tool in your toolbox. Sometimes you carry it around, you don't end up using it, but you want to have it available. So that's where we see with the Celtics, they'll apply for it. Whether they use it, I'm not so sure. I don't know that that's going to be how that kind of goes down here. Pulling this one, Pete Driscoll vlog, one of my best friends in the entire world. Follow the Schooling Struggle podcast. He does a great job there, talking about more real life things other than our basketball world that we live in here. But we have a lot of fun with that with Pete as well. But he says, which is the only state to have never birthed or raised an NBA player. Hint: if you can't get this, you're rather green. Pretty sure it's a Green Mountain State and it's Vermont. So I'm pretty sure that's where we are at. I know New Hampshire has, Maine has, and I think we're at Vermont at this point. Is the only team that has not had an NBA player from there. So, which is fun. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for checking in, brother. Let's go back to our questions we had queued up. Chris asks, any chance Celtics don't make any big moves, stay in the second apron and wait for next year where Kristaps Porzingis comes off the books, make some minor moves, hope Tatum comes back for playoffs? Certainly possible. I don't think it's very likely. I think it is more likely that the Celtics will make moves to try to get at least out of the second apron or really close, reduce the tax bill. But really the idea is not so much about saving money. It's more about let's get off of the restrictions because they're about to get hit with some of the big ones, which is frozen draft picks down the line being moved to the end of the round, those things. And it's important to note with those draft pick related restrictions with the second apron, if you get out of those and you're out for a preset amount of time, they all reset. It's kind of like the repeater tax. If you get out of the tax and you stay out of the tax for a couple of years, it resets for you. So that's where you want to try to get out from underneath those restrictions if you can, because you do not want to be in a place where that gets kind of puts you in a spot where it gets rough to do much beyond filling out the 30th pick every year and can't trade it and you can't do all these other things. That's where it gets really, really tricky with that. So that said, I don't think they're gonna give up assets to get off of contracts. I don't think you're going to see, well, we're having trouble moving Kristaps Porzingis, so who will take a first-round pick or anything like that. I've been jokingly saying, the Brooklyn Nets, Sean Marks should stand in front of Barclays with a sign that, in his hand that says, bring me your tired, you're poor, you're, huddled masses. Just send them with a draft pick and we'll be happy to have them. Because when you're sitting on $60 million in cap space, like the Nets will be, and it's not a strong free agent class, and you're committed to rebuilding, you might as well eat some contracts to take on those guys and their deals in exchange for getting draft picks or young players. But I don't think Boston's going to be there, in part because they're expensive now. They're still going to be expensive. They're probably going to be expensive in the future again. And I think they value those draft picks. That's how you replenish the roster with talent. So they've got to be kind of careful that they don't do too much trading with this. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just flagging a couple more questions here. We're going to go for probably about 20 more minutes, guys. We'll do about an hour tonight with this. It's just, when it's just me, I know you guys get tired of listening to just me talk for a while, so it's a little tough. Let's see. Div X-Ray says, can you tell me if Kai Jones is someone the Lakers can pick up? Played for the Mavs, two-way contract that expires. Can Lakers get him, and how? Yeah, Lakers could get him. He's just going to be a free agent. He's no longer eligible for a two-way. So he'll be an unrestricted free agent this offseason. If I have all my timing right on that, he should be. And yeah, he's available. Probably a minimum guy if he wants to, play in the NBA next season. And that's, yeah, certainly someone the Lakers could take a chance on. Flashed, had moments at times. The last couple of years did kind of better for the Mavs than he did with the Clippers, simply because he got more opportunity. So, we'll see where that goes. Alex Sarau, I think, I apologize if I butchered your last name, Alex. But what do you see Magic doing? Any insider rumors you're hearing? There, no real rumors get out of Orlando. It's pretty quiet there. They really don't. They don't operate through the media. And they also, when they work with other teams, if stuff starts leaking out, the Magic have been known to walk away from deals just because they don't want to operate that way. They want to just get their work done and do their thing. So when people start telling you the Magic are doing this, the Magic are doing that, it's either they're telling you because it's done and agreed to, and the news is going to break any second, or it's, something that just they don't have generally a really great handle on it. They just, you don't hear about a Magic trade being rumored a week out and then it ends up playing out that way. Very rarely do you see that. That said, Jeff Weltman at their exit interview, final press conferences, whatever you want to call it, said the Magic are going to be aggressive this summer and that he believes they need to, in a sense, go all in to push in around the team. It's not all in that they're going to, pile everybody together and trade for, one player or anything like that, but that it's time to move forward. I think you're going to see them make some trades. I think they just don't have cap space. So I think you're going to see them really move some guys and kind of get going with this. So I think there's a real chance with that it's going to be, going forward with the Magic where they do some stuff here with that. So I think we're in a good place there where for Orlando that they do some big stuff here. So we'll see. I just don't know what it is because again they're pretty quiet with that. Let's see here. Flag a couple more questions. Paul says, why? I think he meant to say, why keep a player's? Why does a Paul? I'm trying to interpret your question here, but why does a player's salary have a cap hold when he retires? Players stay on the books until you renounce them or they sign somewhere else. Otherwise, they stay on the books literally forever. Or, unfortunately, if they pass away, and that has happened a couple times with players, but their cap hold stays on the books because it's some teams want to operate as an over the cap team. Let's say you're a team that's, we can get to cap space, but we're only going to have like 10 million in cap space. You'd rather stay over the cap and have the $14 million non-taxpayer mid-level, probably, because that gets you $14 million player versus a $10 million player. There's a tipping point where, well, we could have 10 million in cap space in the 8 million room exception and get a $10 million player and an $8 million player. Okay, sure. You could go that direction, but generally teams they'll sit on cap holds. And then it's funny because I always have a blast when it's like all right, we're finally ready to use cap space. So the Celtics, when they finally used cap space to sign Al Horford the summer they did that, they did go through a slew of renouncements. It was guys like Shaquille O'Neal and Dana Barros and guys who hadn't played for the team in forever, but they still had their free agent cap hold sitting on the books because they'll sit there for a very long time. The Lakers have a bunch of ones that have been sitting on their books. The Heat still have Dwayne Wade on a cap hold on their books. It's just a cap hold. There's no money associated to it. It just, it can be part of what helps keep you over the cap if that's really where you want to be in the end with that. So let's see here. Mario asks, do you think parity is good for the league for the long term? I don't know yet, Mario. I guess that's my real answer to that question. I think so. I think it's good for fan bases to come in believing they have a chance to win a title if they're not one of the top 3 or 4 biggest cities in the league. I think that part is really, really good. I think that's where the CBA and the salary cap has served as a leveler for teams of sort. I think this new CBA is going to introduce shorter windows for teams and more parity than we've ever seen before. I think some of the parities driven by the NBA you don't get lucky to win a title, but you get some combination of being very, very good and some luck along the way to win a title with injuries. Over the last several years, every team that's won one has faced a team that's had some guys out at some point in their run to the title at various times. So that's a thing that happens. But yeah, I think it's a spot where I think it's good, but I think people also like dynasties. Either they want to root for them or root against them. Look at the Warriors, right? As the Warriors came up, everybody loved the Warriors. It's like, man, this team's so fun. And Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson and this Draymond Green guys battling guys that are 6 inches taller than him and have 100 pounds on him. And he's doing all this stuff. And then they were good for a couple of years. And it's like, I hate this Curry guy and these stupid shimmies and this Klay guy who never talks and just is out there in shots. And everybody had feelings about Draymond. So it just becomes, it's kind of a balancer. So I think, I don't know that there's a real answer to that one. At least anything that I, would say, at this point there. Let's see. Dimes asks, Keith, why don't you join an agency or front office? You're so smart. I've done consulting work with both sides in the past. The agency front's a little bit different. Those are newer jobs. A lot of them didn't necessarily have somebody doing the cap work. I don't want to be an agent. It's not my skill set. I wouldn't be very good at being an agent. But a lot of the bigger agencies now hire people to be kind of their in-house cap specialist. So that way when a team's like, sorry, we can't sign your guy. We don't have anything to offer them. They can be like, actually, we know you have your mid-level exception, or you still have $7 million in cap space, or whatever it may be. Them front offices. I mean, I've been very clear. I'd love to work for a team. I've had an opportunity once or twice that just didn't fall at the right time for me in my life. And quite frankly, it was just, a bummer that it didn't work out. And if I was 25 years old and didn't have a family to support and move around the country, I probably would have gone that direction. But just, things went a different way. And all that is to be said, though. Extremely happy doing what I do. I love doing the show here. I love writing for Spot Track. It's like been the perfect home for me with all the things that I like to write about and talk about and all that stuff. So I don't want anybody to shed any tears. Not that anybody was going to, but I'm very happy with the way things have worked out. Do you think De'Ron could impact Denver? That's De'Ron Holmes. I think so. I really like De'Ron Holmes in the draft process last year. I think him tearing his Achilles was a huge bummer for him first and foremost, but also for the Nuggets. Well, I think had every intention of him being the third big in a 3-big rotation with Jokic and Gordon, because he can play on the 4 as well as the 5. And I think that was their intention coming into the season, and probably maybe not right away, but I think down the line, their plan was going to be, let's get this guy in here. Let's really develop him up and, have him by the time we get into the second half of the season in the playoffs, Holmes would be there. So hopefully he comes back fully healthy, ready to go at the start of next season and can really have that impact that we're all hoping to see. Don Vito, is NBA going to expand the number of teams at any point in the near future? Are Vegas and Seattle both locks in quotations rather, to be granted expansion franchises? Thanks for this, Keith. Yes, I believe because the NBA and Adam Silver have been so much like, we're going to talk about expansion this summer. And it was, all those things that they've said. I think that's them basically saying, yes, expansion is coming. We're going to figure this out. Vegas and Seattle locks, close-ish. We'll see. Maybe somebody else comes in and beats them out. I think the more likely thing is we see Vegas and Seattle with teams in, let's say, playing within 5 years. I think we'll see them playing. I think this year will be kind of start the process. Next year will be really kind of ramp the process up. The year after that will be maybe we get into the expansion drafts and those things then 4 years, but we'll give a buffer and say 5. But I think the other thing we're going to see is I think they're going to do those two teams, and I think they're going to have enough interest from enough major cities in North America, Vancouver, Montreal, Mexico City, if they want to go international. Those cities, I think, are going to put offers on the table that are going to be hard for the NBA to say no to for a long period of time. I think what we're going to see is it's not going to be another 20 years before they expand again. I think you'll see, like I said, 2 teams within 5 years. Then I think we're probably going to see another 2 teams probably somewhere within the next, let's call it 5 to 8 years after that. I think we'll get there very, very quickly. Your other question, does Ben Simmons land an NBA contract this summer? Yeah, without a doubt. I think Simmons will be on an NBA roster next year. He maybe gets part of an exception from a team. I don't think anybody will give him their full mid-level, but maybe the taxpayer. He played fairly well for the Clippers at times. I think the Clippers used him very smartly as kind of a like rim rolling big man, more than a strictly on-ball playmaker. And then I think they did some interesting stuff with him on second units where it was get out and run, really push pace, because he should be one of the best rip and run players in the league, where he pulls down a rebound and pushes it up the floor and steals easy offense. So he'll definitely be on a team next year. It's just not going to be a major, contract that he's getting here. Let's see here. I'm just trying to tag a couple. Nick in here. We've got a storm rolling in too, so I apologize if anybody is if I get bounced off here. But I apologize for that. I'm gonna flag a couple more questions, and then that'll probably take us to the end. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just pulling questions, guys. I'll just be a second with this one. I think we're pretty close. Here. Okay. All right. Let's go to Chaotic 1000 says, what's the difference between a team and second apron not aggregating contracts versus a trade with multiple players? So that's a good question. In an aggregation trade, so let's use the example of Drew Holiday and Peyton Pritchard. Drew Holiday makes $32 million. Peyton Pritchard makes $8 million. Put them together, go get a $40 million player. Celtics as a second apron team cannot do that. They would not be allowed to do that. Now, if they came in under the second apron after aggregating, that's fine. Trade legality is always determined on the post-trade amount versus just the pre-trade. It's not your pre-trade status. It's your post-trade where you would be after the trade. That's determined if it's legal or not. So that's where, that's how you could pull that off. But if not, they can't do it. Now, what they could do is trade Drew Holiday, $32 million, and bring in a player who makes 30. Then Peyton Pritchard's $8 million and bring in a player who makes 7. How that would likely get announced in the reporting is Celtics are trading Drew Holiday and Peyton Pritchard for player X and player Y. And that's how it would be reported, because in the end, that's all 99.9% of the viewing NBA fans care about is 2 players are going here and these players are coming back, or 1 player, whatever it is coming back. But for someone like me who cares about the mechanics of a trade and how does it go down, that's where it matters. So that's the difference between aggregating versus putting multiple players in a trade. And again, Celtics can do any second apron team. They can send out the one big salary and take back multiple salaries. You guys hear Trevor and I say all the time, break that contract up into multiple helpful players. Like Kevin Durant, we've talked about $54 million. Break it up into, the 3 guys who make, 18 a piece, 15 a piece. That's better than just trying to get another $54 million player in or whatever it may be. YouTube user, do you expect the Pistons to operate over the cap and sign Beasley with the MLE? If he wants to come back, getting below the cap seems like a bad idea for them. I think a lot of it comes down to Beasley. If Beasley is, I need more than the MLE can offer me, then the Pistons probably need to go under the cap if they're that serious about bringing him back. They can create about 24-ish million in space, so that could be the direction they go. If Beasley's like, no, I'm good with the MLE, then you just stay over. You could then re-sign a couple of your other free agents and move forward that way. That's definitely an option that Detroit could do there with that. So that, we're going to see which path they take. Here's the thing with Beasley and the MLE, though. Is he going to get more than the MLE from another team? The Nets, again, the only team we project to have cap space. So if they don't want to sign him, and kind of why would they, right? They're a rebuilding team. It probably doesn't make a ton of sense for them. That's one thing. Then if you go to the other way, if you're Beasley, let's say it's like, well, I can get 20 million in a sign and trade to team Z. Okay, let's look at that. People forget about sign and trades. There's two components. There's the sign part. But yeah, Beasley's happy to get $20 million a year in a sign and trade. It's the trade part. Can the other team meet what the Pistons would need to be a part of a sign and trade to do that? It's the same thing when it's people like to say, well, they can just sign and trade this, like Kuminga. We talked about at the start of the show. Warriors can just sign and trade him away to get somebody. Can't forget the sign part. The sign part matters on the player side. Trade part matters on the team side. So it's not quite that easy to put those things together that way. Has the NBA ever allowed a trade with an error? I don't know about a trade. I'd have to think about that one, and I'll ask. Some people have been doing it probably back in the day, the early years of the salary cap. Very likely, I think now we would like really jump in there and be like, "Whoa, this is wrong! Like this isn't allowed," and be all over it. They did initially allow. This was several years ago. Nene Hilario, if everybody remembers Nene, the big man from Brazil. They allowed him to sign a contract that actually wasn't legal. And when it eventually got pointed out, they voided it, and then it got worked out. So yeah, I don't know about a trade that was illegal. That's a good question. I'm not sure. You better love somebody asked, can the Sixers sign and trade Grimes? How will it affect their salary cap? They could. And how it affects them is it all depends on what they take back in that sign and trade. If they take back more than they send out, they're going to trigger a hard cap at the first apron. If they send out Grimes by himself and take back less, they're free and clear to do that. If it was send out Grimes combined with another salary to get a player, then that's aggregation that's going to trigger a second apron hard cap. So it really kind of depends. Grimes is a guy young enough. Maybe the Nets could get involved with him on an offer sheet, make Philly sweat a little bit, division rival, make them overpay a little bit more where they want to go. But if I'm Philly, some of that might be driven by what do they do at the draft? If they go with a guy like VJ Edgecombe, who's very much in play with the third pick, they might be like, hey, Edgecombe, McCain, and Maxey, that is solid. We're good with that as our three-guard rotation moving forward. They may look to do a sign and trade with Quentin Grimes. If not, they're probably going to want to keep him. He's clearly the bright spot of that team post-trade deadline. He was the best thing they had going. So I think they're probably going to keep Quentin Grimes, but we'll see with that. David asks, every year seems like half the All-Stars are injured for the playoffs. 82 games seems like too much of a grind. How many would be perfect? 62 or less. A lot of people have landed like 58, play everybody twice, or play everybody twice, play the teams in your own conference 3 times. I think that would get us to like 72 games or something like that. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. That could be possible, I guess. With that, but I don't think they're going to do it because the reality is everybody loses money then. The players lose money, the teams lose money. When everybody loses money, they're just going to kind of like, nobody wants to give up money, right? That's the problem with cutting the draft down with this. So I just don't think that would be the way it would go. There's a question in the chat about Jalen Green for Austin Reeves. It doesn't work. Jalen Green makes far too much money for Austin Reeves, so the Lakers would have to send out other stuff in that, which could then trigger other questions. If Giannis asks only to be traded to the Warriors, what is the Bucks move? You ask for every draft pick the Warriors can send you if you're open to that, or you tell Giannis, hey, sorry, but too bad. They can't offer us the best package. We have to take care of ourselves. They're going to, if he wants to be traded, they're going to work with him right up until it means not getting a great deal for them. Think of it as the equivalent to Damian Lillard. The Trailblazers were willing to work with Damian Lillard. They were willing to send him to the Heat until the Heat didn't give him the best offer that they got better offers, I guess is the best way to put it. So if you're not going to get the best offer, you get kind of stuck at that point. So what could Dallas get for AD if they decided to rebuild? Probably a pretty decent package of players and draft picks. I would imagine. It depend on who it was, right? They would want to be in a spot to, get somewhere big, right? And get there. So yeah, I think with that. Melton was traded for Dennis Schroeder. They made about the same amount of money. So I don't know that they weren't in the second apron because the Warriors were hard capped at the first apron by virtue of the Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson sign and trade acquisitions. That's one of the things that hard caps you. So they definitely weren't in the second apron. They were hard capped at the first apron, but the Melton Shruder trade, that was almost an even salary swap with those guys there. Yeah, this Kyle points out Pistons are probably going to even have less because Cade Cunningham's very likely to get all NBA. So yeah, that's a great point by Kyle with that there. So Dom, would I consider working in Canada? Raptors could sure use my expertise. Raptors do just fine. They don't necessarily need my expertise, but I'd work in Canada. I don't have any problem with Canada. Grew up in Massachusetts. It's almost Canada as far as the weather goes. So, that's probably fine. Can anybody use Sabonis? Yeah, if you had the right defensive guys around him, sure. Great rebounder, really good offensive player, can facilitate offense better than any big in the league that isn't Nikola Jokic, in my opinion. So, yeah, lots of teams could use him. You just got to get the right guys around him. It would just be a little bit tough to pull that off. Let's see. Yeah, if you buy a second-round pick, does that trigger any apron rules? It does. If you use cash in a trade, it triggers a second apron hard cap. So you get hard capped at the second apron. That's because they don't want teams that are super expensive just saying, all right, let's just buy draft picks to fill out our rosters. That's why they did that. Choco Thunder, do you see the Celtics keeping KP, Kristaps Porzingis, next season? I don't think so. I think they're going to move him. I think he is probably the most likely guy to move. He's probably the easiest guy to move. He has an expiring contract. Those have value to teams. Again, in this new apron world and world where teams are capped out and the like and all that. Can the Warriors rescind the QO to Kuminga, then sign him regular and then trade him so they can absorb more salaries? The qualifying offer doesn't really matter. If you rescind the qualifying offer, all that does is changes that he is no longer, he can't sign it anymore. What the qualifying offer is a 1-year contract for a prescribed amount based on the rookie scale. I think for Kuminga, it's like probably $12 million in that range. But it doesn't preclude you from signing and trading him or anything like that. And it doesn't change anything as far as matching salary or anything like that there. So, yeah, Mario asked, do you think there'll be a rule where if a player signs a Supermax, the dream, the team that drafts them will only count a portion of their salary towards the salary cap to help sign players in free agency? It's less about the last part of signing players in free agency and more about some teams have said there should be some apron or tax credit for re-signing your own drafted and developed players. For example, the Warriors, up until really this year, the bulk of that team had been built and developed through the draft. Green, Curry, and Thompson were all guys that they drafted and developed and then re-signed. And that's how they got increasingly more and more expensive. And obviously it helped to have Kevin Durant and sliding his salary slot several times, which ultimately that salary slot got them Jimmy Butler. But yeah, there are teams that have said that. That's part of what Boston would love to have right now is some kind of cap credit for developing Tatum and Brown as former draft picks, or not a cap, but even a tax credit. I don't think you'd ever see a cap credit because then now you're just making the rich richer in terms of acquiring players. But I do think you might see that in terms of, hey, maybe we don't have to break teams up this way. I'm there with that. So, please get TNT broadcast list when teams are in the bonus. They listed a foul too late. I think what they do is they don't put it up until the 5th foul. I think of it as when the 4th team foul has been committed, you're now in the bonus the rest of the way. I think they wait until the 5th foul is committed and you're actually, that's the one that triggers the bonus. I think that's what they do. But regardless, I don't have any power to get TNT to do anything. They've got 7 games left. That the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's it. Also, we're down to 21 maximum NBA games left this season, so I'm a little bit bummed out. If you're a longtime viewer, you guys know I get a little sad here with that. So, Doug, be safe, man. He says, I'm in Missouri. There's a tornado warning, and I'm watching the front office show. What's wrong with you? If you're doing that over getting safe, a lot, Doug, go be safe. I'll be here. We'll be here. You watch later. You don't need to watch this right now. With that, let's see here. It helps that Jimmy says Keith is so damn impressive, rapid firing all of these questions. It helps that I can talk very fast and hopefully people can still understand me. When I get very fast and I get very animated, that's when the Boston accent slips out. So you've probably heard some of that today, too, with this. Football. I like the name football. Who has the most draft capital and players to land Giannis? I mean, that's the Thunder, right? They could offer players and draft capital, so that's probably it with that. So, let's see. Denver has enough room to trade for a poster of Giannis. That's true. Would there? This is a great question from user 205. When will the Thunder get too expensive? It's coming up. So they've got one more year with Williams and Holmgren. They're extension eligible this summer. And then the 26-27 season will be when those extensions will kick in. And then you're going to have SGA shortly thereafter with a extension that comes in too. So that's going to be a spot where that's pricey. Now you're talking potentially 3 max guys. The going assumption is Holmgren's a no-brainer max guy, and Williams is probably a max guy there. But here's the good news. They've got all the draft picks, so they can kind of just keep, cycling through. And what they'll do if they have to, they'll move a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein. And then what they'll do is they'll say, all right, we're moving on from him, and then we're going to reset. They'll take that $30 million. They'll break that up in a $20 million guy, $10 million guy. And they'll just keep kind of recycling the roster around SGA, Holmgren, and Williams, the wing one, obviously, with that. So, yeah, we'll see with this. Jeffrey asks, who do you see as the fit in Philly? Thunder do on their pick at 26. Another good class, top 4 protected. I mean, top 4s don't sound as good as top 6ers. So that's a little bit of a bummer. But anyway, fit is Philly in this draft. I think it's either going to be, I think here's the most likely options. It's either Edgecombe, a trade where they move back a couple spots while picking up a win now player and another draft pick, or the third option would be Ace Bailey. Ace Bailey does not scream like he's a Daryl Morey player. That's challenge number 1 for them. He's not a super clean fit if Paul George is still going to be on the roster. So that part's a little harder to see with that one. But those would be my options for Philly with that. So let's see here. Jalen Green's extension kicks in like next season, like essentially now. He's wrapping up his rookie scale deal, and then he jumps up to 30+ million next season with this. So, all right, guys, I got time for a couple more. All right, here we go. Div X-ray. Do you believe Giannis leaves the Bucks this year, or does he wait till next year, take advantage of where he wants to go? I don't think anything changes next year other than he could opt out of his contract. After that, I think it's if he's leaving, it's probably this year. I don't think I don't think he would stay one more year to then just ask out. I mean, it's certainly possible. I imagine. We'll see. That could be how that plays out, but I don't think so. I think he'll probably if he's going, I think it'll be this summer, and I think it's closer than it's ever been. Let's put it that way. with that. Gabe asks, is it worth it for the Lakers to move up in the second round and draft the center? Maybe. There's going to be a lot of center options available, like from 31 to like 40-ish. I think they could get guys there, so that would be potentially. I just don't know how they're moving up. Like, to move up in the second round, that's probably more second rounders you're going to send out. Certainly not going to send a first round pick to move up in the second round. So maybe, we'll see. Yeah, having just that one late second's a little tough for them. As a Celtic fan, if you had the power to choose the worst players for the Lakers to put around Luka, who would they be? I mean, I'm not going to get mean about this, but like guys who can't defend and guys who can't shoot, like, I mean, I don't know, me and you and a bunch of other randos who aren't NBA players, but actual NBA guys. Yeah, guys who can't defend and can't shoot. Like, I think that would be, sure, why not? Like, if we're trying to wreck the Lakers, yeah, let's go. But, I like Luka, and I don't, I like Trevor too much to want to do that to him. All right, we're going to close with two more. Joshua, Andrew Wiggins to the Lakers, any thoughts? Yeah, maybe. Little harder to pull off. I think that's the challenge for that. That's a pretty big number to acquire for the Lakers without sending out another big number. So I don't know that I know that's how I love using my tradable salary to get Andrew Wiggins. I've generally been higher on Andrew Wiggins than most have been, but I don't know. I would be careful with that. All right, I'm going to have to answer two more actual now because this. Whoops. Do you wait till UFA to? No, you sign the extension if you're Luka. Just take it. But you do the Donovan Mitchell extension. You do the shorter one that gets you back on the market at 10 years of service, and then you go. So same thing Donovan Mitchell did, and I think that's what Luka and the Lakers will both do with that. There was one. Can teams still pay cash to move up in the second round? Again, if you use cash in a trade, you trigger a second apron hard cap. So you can, and it did happen, I think, twice last year, when as this rule came into play, but it's a little less likely. And then I'm going to finish with this one. What do you think about Derek Queen from Maryland? He's going to be really, really good. I'm not fully sold. He's a 5 that you can kind of build everything around. I think it's going to be him and another big. You need a big who can protect the rim, protect him a little bit defensively, but I think he'll be a good rebounder, really good passer for a player his size, and he can really score out of the ball. And I think he's going to shoot jumpers better too. A little ground bound, not super duper athletic, but he knows how to use his size and his strength. I think what will happen is you'll see him fill out his strength more, and he'll become a real guy that can be kind of tough to handle. There's a little bit of a right-handed Julius Randle in his game. Not quite the ball handler Randle is, and Randle is a pretty good playmaker right away, but I think that's kind of what Derek Queen reminds me of a little bit there. But yeah, I think Derek Queen's going to be really, really good in the NBA, and I'm really excited to see what he becomes. All right, guys, we went for an hour and 5 minutes. We went a little over. Hey, we had fun tonight. I'm so glad we were able to do this and get a show. Thanks for everybody who came in and hung out with me, and thanks for dealing with me while I went through the having to kind of look at the questions and tag them and all that stuff as I'm flying solo tonight. Hopefully Trevor will have power back tomorrow. We're very thankful that Trevor and his family are safe. That's what matters most of all. So we're really happy. But thanks for hanging out here with me on a Monday night. We had a blast doing this, or at least I did. I can't speak for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it and had fun, but I definitely had fun. Answer questions again in a whole bunch, a lot of different stuff, some nerdy stuff too. But that was obviously fun for me. So thanks for hanging out. We'll get back to you guys. Hopefully tomorrow, if not, probably Wednesday, a little later down the line. I'll put out my conference finals predictions on social media on both Blue Sky and Twitter. So those are at least out there and on the record before the series start up tomorrow. But enjoy the games tomorrow. Game free night. Go do something. And Doug, be safe, man. Be safe in this tornado warning. It's too much weather happening all around the country right now. We want everybody to be safe. And we'll end it there with thanks for hanging out with us. And we'll see you next time. See ya and stay safe.